got this article that is letting us know because doctors are writing less opioid scripts, it's now sparking more pharmacy robberies among these devils. Okay, they are determined to have their opioid, whether the doctor write that script or not, they don't care. All right. Man, I tell you what, if crack addicts had done that, it would have been a trail of bodies everywhere. This is an AP article. Let me see, dated June 23rd, 2017. I'll leave the link to this article in the description box. All right. As the nation opioid plague intensifies, Indiana cracked down on overprescribing doctors and pill mills, catering to people with addiction. The state also took aim at doctor shopping, the practice of visiting multiple physicians to score more painkillers. Only a devil would do that. The measures had an impact, but not what officials hope for. While making opioid prescriptions harder to get, the crackdown also helped spur a twofold increase in robberies of pharmacies that exacerbated the state's standing as number one in the nation for those crimes. Between 2009 and 2016, Indiana had 651 pharmacy robberies, the most in the U.S., and more than 597 recorded by number two, California, which has 6 times the population. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration record shows the frequent holdups reflect a grim reality. With each regulation or law enforcement tactic, the opioid crisis quickly shifts to evade new obstacles. Dealers and those struggling with addiction adapt, and the plague continues with little interruption. They're always looking for whatever they can get their foothold. And once they do, they're going to take advantage. A deputy of pharmaceutical investigations with the DEA in Arlington, Virginia, pharmacies with law enforcement agencies in Indianapolis, where most of the robberies have occurred, are fighting back. Pharmacy chains have installed time-release safes that won't open for several minutes, forcing robbers to risk by waiting. Signs so far are positive. Robberies in Indianapolis numbered only 8 through early June compared to 55 for all of 2016. But some criminals responded to those efforts by traveling from Indianapolis to small suburban towns to rob pharmacies, including one in January in Elwood, about 40 miles from Indianapolis, where 2 robbers herded frantic employees into the bathroom after threatening them with a handgun. And that's another thing. Those heroin addicts, they sure enough all know they got a handgun, and they go in there and put that gun in everybody's face up in that pharmacy. Indiana economic makeup has made it a likely breeding ground for opioid addiction for years. The 2008 financial crisis hit the state manufacturing economy hard, causing waves of layoffs. The physically demanding job in heavy industry have long left workers prone to injuries that could lead to prescriptions for painkillers. They get a legit medical prescription and then all of a sudden it gets out of control, said Jason Huckleberry, an Emory Hospital professor of health policies who has studied opioid addiction. He said, the state already had outsized opioid woes related in part of its location along Interstate 65 through 70 and two major corridors for illicit drugs. Opioid addiction was behind the state's worst ever HIV outbreak in 2015, a plague that infected more than 200 people in rural country north Louisville, Kentucky. The most had shared needles while injecting a prescription painkiller. That year, Indiana ranked 17th in the nation in heroin and prescription opioid deaths, with 1,245 deaths per 100,000 people. 4 years ago, the legislature directed the state's medical license board to draft rules requiring patients to visit their doctors periodically to keep their prescription refills. The changes included requiring doctors to use online database to check patients' use of controlled substances. But stemming easy access to opioid probably contributed to the binge of 168 robberies in 2015, more than twice the previous year total, as more people addicted to prescription opioids robbed stores seeking painkillers and other potent drugs, said Greg Zoeller, who was Indiana's Attorney General at the time. So as you can see, as they're pulling back on writing scripts, it's just causing people to rob the pharmacies even more. The holdup, sometimes more than 5 a day in Indianapolis, flooded the black market with nearly 200,000 pills, primarily painkillers. We knew full well that if you reduce easy access, they're going to have these kinds of consequences, Zoella said. Lieutenant Craig McCart, who oversees robberies investigations for Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, said 85% of Indianapolis pharmacy robberies in 2015 were committed by juveniles, enlisted by adult dealers offering cash and gifts to rob stores. Wow, you got the teenagers in there robbing stores. Amid the crime spree, Indianapolis police teamed up with DEA, FBI, and the federal prosecutors for multi-agency approach that led to the indictment of 35 people, including 6 juveniles, in 62 of the robberies. The state's 2 largest drugstore operators, Walgreens and CVS, have also installed time-release safes at their roughly 180 Minneapolis pharmacies and added armed guards at some stores in recent years. Indianapolis pharmacy robberies dropped to 78 in 2016, but the state still ranks second in the U.S. behind California. The latest efforts targeting the robberies is a law taking effect in July that will lead to longer sentences for people who threaten violence or injure anyone during pharmacy robberies. Ken Fagerman, a former South Bend pharmacist who wrote a book about the robberies, said the pharmacy industry should not have tolerated the heist for years and shares some blame. No, they tolerated it because these were mainly Caucasoids doing these robberies. Oh, you see that? The stores don't mind getting robbed as long as it's a bunch of white people doing it. Unbelievable. It's regrettable that more wasn't done sooner, he said. All right. So that's Indianapolis. The pharmacy robberies are going through the roof. All right, please leave your comments and subscribe, and if you can support this channel, please do. Peace, family.